Committee meeting to order. Thank you, Mr. Ash. Before we get into the agenda, I would like to turn the meeting over to Colleague Greenwood, who has a presentation to go through.
Thank you, Chair Pond. Really briefly, this is a special morning for Marta, and I really wanted to invite Chief Creer up to start us off and let us know what's about to take place, and then we'll follow up from there. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. Good morning, everyone. Scott Creer, Chief of Police for Marta. This morning, I'd like to introduce Mary Leftridge Bird. She is the Regional Security Director for TSA, which is the Southeast region, which includes us. She was appointed in 2020, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Administration. She has responsibility for ensuring surface operations and infrastructure security in support of cybersecurity, freight and passenger railways, pipelines, maritime, motor carrier, and transit systems across 13 states, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, including 15 high-threat urban areas. She has served in TSA since April of 2009, and in her previous position, she served as 11 years as the Federal Security Director assigned to the world's busiest airport, our own, Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International. She led her team enhancing facility, passenger, and baggage security, building, sustaining partnerships, focusing on professionalism, process improvement, and opportunities for workplace development. I personally have worked with her for many years. We have a great relationship. She worked hand in hand with me through the Super Bowl and through many big events in the city of Atlanta. And this morning, I'd like to introduce Mary Leftridge Bird.
Good morning, Mr. Greenwood, members of the board, all present. Thank you for the introduction, Chief. I appreciate it very much. As I've been introduced, Mary Leftridge Bird, Regional Security Director. When I listen to the accounting of responsibilities I manage, I go directly to the team. I invert the triangle, knowing that the team is really at the top of that triangle to make it work. I had the opportunity yesterday to do an opening for a tabletop exercise, and one of the things I emphasized was that I believe partnership is really the millennium word for relationship, and how we accomplish what we do is built on relationship. I'm really fortunate and privileged to have been a partner with Marta, myself, and this great staff with whom I've worked over many years. And I think one of the testaments, not a test, but a testament to the relationship or partnership is when I can talk with someone at 3 in the afternoon to accomplish a task. That's a good thing of mutual interest. But when I call someone at 3 in the morning and he or she says, "Hey, Mary, what do you need?" That's really what makes the difference in terms of our public service. So I have the great privilege of introducing the staff this morning and the Deputy Assistant Administrator, Ron Pavlik, who's come to Atlanta to make the presentation. And we appreciate very much the time on your very ambitious agenda, and won't take a lot of time, but absolutely do celebrate in the moment our partnership and how we work with Marta. So with us this morning, we have Rusty Edwards. Rusty is the Assistant Federal Security Director for Law Enforcement in Atlanta. When I was the Federal Security Director at the airport, I learned a lot from Rusty and still learn from him, even though we're working in different divisions now. Our division, the Surface Division, is brand new, only about 2.5 years old. I miss the work at the airport and am enjoying the continued partnerships that transcended from aviation to the Surface Division. Also with us, Anthony Jones is the Assistant, Lord have mercy, I just changed your title, didn't I? The Supervisory, I was going that way, Supervisory Transportation Inspector. Thank you, Anthony, here in the Atlanta field office. So we're glad to have Anthony with us this morning. And next to him is Dexter Tolson, who is one of the TSI's Transportation Security Inspectors in the Atlanta field office. Also with us, Primla Allen, in the back of the room there. That seating has nothing to do with her importance, as she has moved so many practices and policies and personnel in the Atlanta field office for a number of years. Primla is the Assistant Federal Security Director for Inspections and Regulatory Compliance. Glad that she's with us this morning. And next to Primla is Stevie Lockett. Stevie is now in the office where he and I work as one of the program analysts, but was a transportation security inspector for a number of years. I think it is 11 years as a TSI. So I'm glad that Stevie is with us this morning as well. And I'm going to move directly to Ronald Pavlik. He's the Deputy Assistant Administrator for the Surface Division, TSA Surface Division. And I'd invite the Deputy to the podium to make the presentation this morning. Again, thank you very much for the time on your agenda. Deputy.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Greenwood and MARTA board members. On behalf of Administrator Bukowski and Assistant Administrator Sonia Proctor, it's truly a privilege to be here today to present MARTA with a TSA BASE award. Just a little bit about the BASE assessment. It's a voluntary assessment. It's every 3 years. And, you know, some CEOs and general managers are a little reluctant to invite the federal government to come look in your closet and your dirty, messy kitchen drawer that we all have. But it's really, that's where it all starts, is the initial commitment to come in and allow TSA to look at you. And there's 17 categories within the BASE assessment that covers a whole raft of security measures and practices and principles, best practices. And MARTA's not a stranger to it. This is their 5th one that they've gone through. So over a decade where MARTA has really committed to, and it's a really great reflection on the leadership here, the men and women, and it should give this board a sense of comfort that knowing that MARTA ranked so high and scored a gold standard award. And in order to get a gold standard award in the 17 categories, you got to score an overall 90% in all overall, and no category can have less than 70%. So it's a very high bar to achieve. Any given year, maybe 5 to 6 agencies across the United States will actually achieve this standard. And MARTA, you're always leading the way. This isn't their first gold standard, nor it's a second. It's the 3rd time they've gotten the gold standard award, and truly a great reflection of Chief Kerr. Former Chief, Wanda Dunham. This organization has really leaned forward and been a great partnership with TSA, and to achieve a gold standard for the 3rd time is really remarkable, and it should give this board some comfort. It should give the riders some comfort, and all your employees here at MARTA a sense of comfort knowing that you represent security and the way you lean forward when it comes to security. So it's a great honor to present this award to you today. The Gold Standard Award presented to the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, Atlanta, Georgia, for achieving the highest standard of excellence in security for 2021. So congratulations, sir.
Just very quickly, I cannot take any credit for this. What you see behind me is the the Emergency Preparedness Unit Manager, Michael Polanese, Lieutenant Salters, of course, my 2 deputies, and everybody in the MARTA Police Department contributed to this award. So I have to thank them personally for all their hard work, and without them, we would not have this. So thank you.
So thank you, Director Byrd. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Marta. Listening to the titles of the people in the room, seeing the numbers of people, it's clear to me that this is a prestigious award. It's so well revered that this many important people came to deliver it. Listening to Director Byrd's words about the relationship, the vast majority of our customers out there enjoy the quality of relationship that MARTA, our team MARTA officers portray on a regular basis. So yes, they meet those 17 categories, and yes, they're gold standard across the board, but on a daily basis, their gold standard is also present in the way they deal with relationships with people, and that's, in my mind, what really sets them apart. So on behalf of MARTA, on behalf of the board and the executive, again, thank you very, very much.
Okay. Before we start the agenda, just in speaking for the board, again, we'd like to express our appreciation for the police department, Chief Crowder, and all of his team for everything you do. All right, everybody has checked in, so the first item is approval of the March 31 meeting minutes. So could I have a motion for approval and a second? Okay. Are there any comments, questions? If not, if we could go ahead and vote, please. The motion passes. Second item is a resolution authorizing the execution of a permanent non-exclusive easement agreement with Georgia Power for right-of-way needs for Marta Parcel C711GE at Abernathy Road for I-82 to 85 in the 400 collector lanes in Fulton County. That'll be led by Robin Boyd.
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, members of the committee. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this is up at Abernathy Road near Georgia 400, and GDOT was doing road widening, so Georgia Power is relocating utilities and needs 249.1 square feet of MARTA property. This would be a non-exclusive permanent easement and doesn't in any way affect our transit or our maintenance. The easement was appraised for $14,325, but Georgia Power had changed their plans many times throughout the design phase, and that caused us to do a lot of different appraisals and engineering studies. So they are also going to reimburse us for $62,325.20. And this was part of the 13-acre site that was originally purchased in 1983 for a park and ride. And then in 2000, the FTA approved the land for development. And there is FTA interest, and concurrence has been requested. And to the next slide. So if you can see, it's just a very tiny portion right there at Abernathy Road at the corner. And the next slide, please. So I'm asking for authorization to execute a permanent, non-exclusive easement agreement with Georgia Power Company. Are there any questions?
Let me get a motion on the second, please.
So moved. Motion approved, brother.
I need a motion on the second. Let's see. Got that. Okay, any questions for Ms. Boyd? If not, I'll call the question. Could we please vote? The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement with the owners of 50 Upper Alabama Street, Atlanta, Georgia, for MARTA Police Department's relocation during the Five Points Station transformation project. That'll be led by Robin Boyd again. Robin?
Okay, the next slide, please. So as part of the rehabilitation and transformation projects at 5 Points, the MARTA Police Precinct has to be relocated during the construction. So we started looking around for a place for them to lease, and the police went with us. We toured at least 4 or 5 locations. One of the important priorities was to be very close to the station, and then to also have safety and security for the officers. So we ended up finding, this is 4,642 square feet. It's at the underground. So it's catty corner to the 5 Point Station, right next to the Fairfield Marriott. And it's on the second floor, so it provides safety for them. This will be a gross lease with 3% annual escalations, and the gross lease means we won't have to pay any additional for common area maintenance or insurance. The total lease over the 5 years is $673,995.69. We also have a 1-year renewal option in case it's needed. And the space, again, we toured it with the police, and then we also toured with safety and IT. And everybody was happy with the space, and it gives them everything they need, including there are 2 cinder block rooms there that can be converted to holding cells with very minimal fit out. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is the location. It's literally across Peachtree Street on Alabama. And the next slide. So we're asking for authorization to execute a lease for the MPD relocation. Does anybody have any questions?
Could we get a motion and a second first? I think we had. See a motion by Mr. Mullis and a second by Frida Hardage. Okay. Any questions for Ms. Boyd?
Mr. Chair. First of all, a statement first. I commend you on the lease rate that you got there. That's a fantastic lease rate. My office is 3 or 4 blocks away, and it's much better than what I'm receiving. So great job in negotiations. Just a quick question about tenant improvement. Is the landlord going to contribute towards tenant improvement, or do you have a approximate budget for tenant improvement?
For the budget, I can't speak to that. I know that would be the project manager for 5 Points. They are not providing tenant improvement money because the space is basically, everything is in place. Everything they needed. The only thing will be the holding cells will need plumbing for 2 toilets, 2 sinks. But there are also already 2 restrooms for the officers. They are also going to leave for us to borrow furniture for the conference room and everything. So the only other things we have to do, and we toured a lot of places that were shells. So this one was already done. And the only other thing is IT will put in some card readers, and there is an elevator that they'll put a card reader so nobody can access that 2nd floor.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Boyd? If not, we'll.
I had one,
Sure.
real quick, Al.
Rod, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd, for the presentation. I
Raise
appreciate
your
that.
hand.
I just had a quick question about parking for the police officers and their automobiles. Are they parking in the attached underground parking deck, or where would they be?
There's parking behind the there's actually a parking lot kind of hidden between all of the buildings. And if necessary, I know they could also park right on Alabama Street out front. But they can definitely, if they have to bring anybody to a holding cell, they can come in through the back, and then they'll have private access to the 2nd floor on the elevator.
Okay. And is that parking just ours, like, does it have a gate, or how do we?
No, it is parking for the other tenants, but there aren't a lot of tenants, and it's a smaller lot, but it's an outside open lot.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Boyd? If not, we'll call the question. Can we vote, please? The motion passes. Thank you,
you.
Robin. The last item on the agenda is a briefing for procurement of acoustical and vibration consulting services by Larry Prescott. Larry?
Morning, everybody. Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, committee members. Before you is a briefing for procurement of consultant services for the acoustics and vibration. Next slide. Currently, we're at the end of the 10-year program that we've had, a 5 and a 5, with these 2 companies. This is very specialized work. It's on call that we do not have that ability to do it in-house, so the need for this is still consistent as we go forward. Next slide. Basically, the services cover compliance with the federal, state requirements, dealing with citizen complaints to make sure that we develop mitigation and assess what's going on out there with our constituents. They support the public address system as it affects both internally as well as externally to our stations and our neighbors. We track vibration with the tracks, with the new vehicles, the consistent work going on the trackway, the vibration for the interior of the vehicles as well as in the stations. Construction noise, TR4 is out there changing things, so any noise from any of the vehicles that caused by any of the physical changes out in the field, as well as infrastructure support, any complaints or issues with vibration on pedestrian bridges or any of our facilities. Next slide. So basically, we're going to recompete this, or solicit this for one more consultant again. This time we're going to do a 3-year base with a 2-year option. We've based this on our $160,000 cost that we've gone over the years for a total of $800,000 for this program. We'll fund it through our projects as they pop up for the capital programs. As far as DNI goes, currently we don't have we have a 0% DB participation, but DNI is reviewing that to see if anything's changed in the past 10 years. So next slide. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay. This is just a briefing. It
Yes, sir.
isn't a resolution item. So are there any questions for Mr. Prescott?
Yes. Mr. Prescott, and maybe the DNI review is not your bailiwick, but I'm going to say this. I hope that as we review it, we are mindful of the fact that splitting the requirement into pieces may facilitate greater involvement.
Sir.
Because I have difficulty believing that in Atlanta, in 2022, there are no minority firms that have any experience in acoustics.
Agreed.
I don't believe that's the case. And so I would encourage us, before this comes back to this board for a vote, to work hard to make sure that we are doing this in a way that promotes the values we share.
Definitely.
Thank you.
It's one of the reasons we're going with a 5-year program this time, not a 10-year, so we're not locked in for so long.
Let me add to that, Mr. Ash. You're right on target, and this contract certainly has things that smaller minority and women-owned firms can participate in. So it shouldn't be any problem. There are a lot of parts to this that others can do. So.
As a consumer of this service from engineering firms, I'm interested because we use the reports and incorporate their technology in our buildings because we're close to MARTA stations, and so we want to reduce the noise from, I don't know, 37 dB down to 33 dB in interiors. Yep. Who is the consumer of the reports, and how do we implement the solutions? Is it crews or is it buildings? Who consumes this report?
Overall, I own these reports. I work with our maintenance away groups, the construction groups, and any of the complaints that come in from anywhere. So our design crews go out and coordinate with this team, so it all comes through me at the end of the day. So,
who's responsible for this implementing the solution? Is it the private landowner? Is it the contractor for MARTA? Who implements the solution?
That's where we use this consultant to make the recommendations, and then we either recommend outside, or if we have any liability, then we go in and take care of them within our program.
All right.
As a quick example, I kind of put this up there over in Decatur. There are condominiums and other, this is just a typical example, that are built on top of us, have been for years, and we have pre-existing conditions, and we have new tenants come in. We have to re-educate or update anything that we have done in the past.
Okay. Any other questions for Larry? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Brother Chair. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the March 31st Operations and Safety Committee meeting. I have a motion to approve the minutes. Nobody want to approve the minutes? How you, but it doesn't show up here. Okay. Our first item is procurement of controls. Oh, I thought they did.
We need to vote? or-
Please vote.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is what's confusing me. Okay. Everyone pass your vote? The second item we have this morning is the procurement of control system upgrades of the NSH USA Corporation Stanray Wheel Truing Machines, RFP P49916. Douglas Miller, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Doug Miller, and I am the Director of Railcar Maintenance. May I direct your attention to Agenda Item Number 2. The requested resolution authorizes the General Manager requested resolution authorizes award of a contract for the procurement of Railcar wheel truing machine control system upgrades, RFPP P49916. Next slide, please. I will speak to these areas and present the resolution for consideration. Next slide, please. The requested resolution authorizes the General Manager, CEO, or his delegate to enter into a contract with NSH USA Corporation. This is formerly Simmons Machine and Tool Corporation in the amount of $953,529. This is a one-year single-source contract with no option. It is being funded with local capital funds from the approved fiscal year 2023 budget. Funds for subsequent fiscal years, if needed, will be included in subsequent annual budgets. Next slide, please. The authority has 3 Stanray wheel truing machines that are used to correct railcar wheels to their design profiles. Maintaining correct profiles of rail wheels mitigates risks of derailment, removes wheel flats, and matches wheel sizes on a per-truck basis. The existing control systems of all 3 machines consist of older hardware and outdated operating systems with firmware and software that the OEM will no longer support. These control systems have reached the end of their useful life, which makes these machines less reliable. The upgrades to the wheel truing machines control systems will ensure optimum performance and will increase the overall reliability and productivity of this equipment. It will extend the useful life and ensure availability for use on our new rail fleet. Next slide, please. As the original equipment manufacturer, the OEM, for Marta's 3 Stanray wheel truing machine, NSH USA Corporation has the experience, training, technical expertise, and parts to support this single-source contract. The Department of Audit conducted a price analysis and determined that the price was fair and reasonable. There is no DBE requirement due to this being a single-source contract. However, NSH USA Corporation has agreed in good faith to use MARTA-approved shippers when possible. Next slide, please. At this time, I am requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board this procurement of rail car wheel truing machine control systems upgrades, RFPP P49916, with NSH USA Corporation in an amount not to exceed $953,529. Vice Chair Abdul Salam, I will now turn it back over to you for consideration. Thank you. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's on. At this time, I'd like to get a motion to adopt RFPP P49916. If I get a motion, and we take a second and then discussion. Thank you. Second? Okay. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
A few years ago, we had the opportunity to tour the facilities that this equipment is used at, and it was really enlightening to see how important these type of equipments go about making sure that the wheels on our trains are done in a way that they run safe and that they run quiet, and really is an effective piece of equipment. I was just amazed once we got into the shop to see how much work is done with keeping our equipment in good repair. And so, once again, as this equipment gets older, it has to be replaced, and so this is just one of those things. So I can appreciate what we're trying to do to move this type of project forward. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take the vote. All voting? I mean, again. The motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for bus lifts, remanufacturing, B47090. Mr. Sean Thomas, Director.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I will recognize Chairman Worthy, but also you, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and esteemed Operations and Safety Committee members. My name is Sean Thomas. I'm the Director of Facilities, and I would like to bring your attention to agenda item number 3. And this is a resolution authorizing the modification of contractual authorization for IFB 47090, and this is for the remanufacturing of bus lift equipment. Next slide, please. This initiative supports several strategic objectives. First and foremost is to approve upon the state of good repair of the authority's bus lift assets. Also, we feel like this positions the authority as an employer of choice among skilled trades in our area, as well as supporting several key performance indicators associated with the availability of our bus fleet of 500 plus buses. Next slide. So some of the key topics I'm going to discuss, I'm going to provide a summary of the scope of services under this contract agreement. I'll discuss the progression since the notice to proceed 12 months ago, and close out with an overview of the modification request. Next slide. So this scope of this contract originally covered, it targeted the largest group type of these bus lifts, and this focused on the types of lifts that were used to provide general bus maintenance for our bus fleet. And these lifts have proven to be durable and reliable for us over the past 25 years. However, they have surpassed their estimated useful life, and in light of the fact that they're used 24/7, 365 in support of our operation, we felt it necessary to continue moving forward with this type of effort. The original scope of work was to remanufacture 12 bus lifts at 2 maintenance facilities. And this modification will allow us to continue moving forward in that same direction. Next slide. So some key improvements you'll note from the images here. In addition to the visual improvements of the shop areas, it also allowed us to resolve some key deficiency items that we found during one of our most recent condition assessments. It extends the useful life of this operation critical equipment, as well as reducing the downtime for lift equipment as a result of repairs and replacement of key components. And last but certainly not least is we get an additional 2-year warranty from this work that's being performed. Next slide. So I wanted to show a progression of some of the efforts that we've undertaken for the past 12 months. Again, we got the notice to proceed for the original contract in April of 2021. To the left, you can see the list. There's that list of 30 lifts of this specific type, and that condition assessment kind of helped us hone in and prioritize which pieces of equipment we wanted to prioritize first as part of this effort. And to the top right, you can see a breakout of how the number of lifts that we have by type, and again, the blue column represents the parallelogram lifts that were focused in on this solicitation. And to the bottom right, I kind of wanted to show some of the progression over the past 12 months. Thus far, we've completed 6 of those 12 have been remanufactured, shipped off, remanufactured, and brought back to the authority, reinstalled, and put back into service. We currently have 4 that are underway because we've only tried to do 2 at a time, just to minimize the disruption to the bus maintenance operation rather. And then we'll have 2 left from the original scope of work. And again, based off the success of this program over the last 12 months, I'm here before you today seeking the opportunity to continue moving forward. I want to do an additional 12 lifts and make some continued strides towards that goal. Next slide. So an analysis of the modification, again, is contract IFB B47090. We received the original notice to proceed in April of 2021. I'm here today to ask for an additional $927,660 and an additional term of 1 year to be added to this contract. And the DBE goal would remain the same as the original solicitation at 7%. And therefore, I respectfully request authorization to modify contract IFB 47090 to EQ renew for the remanufacture of bus lift equipment. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. I got a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we'll we'll go ahead and get a motion and a second, and then we'll talk. Yes, motion? I can't see it. Okay, thank you. The question that I had was with the 12 lifts that you were talking about, 6 of those 12s have been completed. How do you prioritize which ones to do next? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. I know exactly what you're saying. Great question. So when we started it, we kind of chose the lifts that were most problematic, that, based off of the amount of downtime and the amount of the type, sometimes the types of repairs. But as we've kind of moved through the program, we've kind of honed in on first and foremost trying to make sure that we spread out the effort across the 2 garages that have these type of lifts, one being Laredo Bus Garage and the other being Perry Bus Garage. But since that time, we've kind of improved upon our efforts and tried to make sure that we coordinate with our partners in bus maintenance to kind of minimize the impact. So that's some of the key factors that kind of help us prioritize which lifts that we target.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Further questions? Mr. I'll come back.
Okay, Madam Chair, yes, this couple, so the original contract was for how many lifts?
12.
Okay, so you've done those 12, my understanding, you've done 10, you have 2 remaining?
So we've completed 6. There are 4 that are currently underway with the manufacturing. We're basically down to the last 2 under the original terms.
All right, okay. And so with this additional funding, is this going to include some more lifts? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
Another 12 lifts?
Yes, sir. We want to do 12 additional lifts.
Okay, so at the end of this all over, you would have done all the lifts? Is that what fair to say?
So we will have, at the end of this, we will have completed 26 of the 30.
Okay, 26 of the 30?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellis, I saw your line.
So I see on page, I have 2 questions. On page 5 of your presentation, you have, it appears to be a before and after view of the lift area. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, sir.
And so we've had workers previous to, current workers working in conditions like this. Is that what we?
So it's hard to say exactly, but so the workers that were in that picture, that was part of the cleanup to prepare.
I'm sorry.
It was part of the cleanup to prepare the lifts for being removed.
And the side-by-side image is what our partners working on the maintenance, that's what the environment they get to work in with these lifts completed, is that correct?
If I may, would you tell us what slide you're referring to?
We're on slide number 5 in his presentation.
Thank you.
Vic, just if I can jump in, what I'm seeing there on the left side is the folks involved in the rehabilitation of the equipment. So yeah, clearly that is the state that if you were to use those bus lifts, that's, you know, the markings that you see on the right, the clear move to a quality product is not there. So, but what you see on the left is the rehabilitation work. It's not the actual maintainers of the bus equipment.
Oh, so that's the actual work. So the working conditions are better than what I see here on the left side of the slide.
Absolutely. You wouldn't be allowed to work with tripping hazards or any of that stuff in your way. But what it means is that bus lift would be out of commission. And so if that bus lift is out of commission, then we have trouble making pullout and all the rest of that stuff that goes with a maintenance system that's not top notch.
I am all for giving our maintenance partners who keep our buses running the best environment to do their jobs in and the best equipment to do their jobs in. And I would like to encourage, it looks like we have a total of 75 lifts inside of the program. Is that correct, General Manager?
No, you have more than that. You have 75 of the, you want to take that, Sean, the yellow is 75 and then the...
Yes, sir. What we were showing there was just the spread of the different types of lifts and the quantity of each type. But this does not represent all of the lifts in their totality. This is focused on the bus maintenance.
Bus maintenance lifts, right?
Yes, sir.
So we have 30 of the
yes, sir. 30 of the parallelogram. Yes, sir.
And we have 15 of the platform.
Yes, sir.
And we have 30 of the in-ground, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so we have a total of 70 for the bus lifts, is that correct?
That's yeah.
And could we maybe think about doing all of the lifts for inside of this program, or do we need all the lifts in the program?
Great question. I think I know where you're going with that. So what's not part of this program, what's not shown as part of this program is the fact that a lot of our bus lifts are being completely replaced and removed. So for instance, with most of the in-ground types, because of the age and some of the environmental concerns and the type of impact that it will have to our bus, to our partners at the bus maintenance facilities. It's a completely different impact to their day-to-day operations, right? But what we're focusing on here is the stuff that can give us the most bang for our buck with the least amount of impact, and that's to rehabilitate and remanufacture, not necessarily the replacement. But we do have several replacement efforts as well, but I'm not really covering that as part of what we're doing in this solicitation.
I'm supportive of this, and I'm supportive of it to make sure that our partners in this tight labor market have the best conditions and world-class facilities to keep the MARTA moving. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Hearing none, I'll ask you to go ahead and place your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing modification and a contract authorization for eligibility assessment services for MARTA Mobility. RFP P46866. Roosevelt Stripling, it's your turn.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Worthing, Vice Chair Ms. Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, members of the Operations Safety Committee. I am Roosevelt Stripling, the Support Services Program Manager for MARTA Mobility, and may I direct your attention to agenda item number 4. This is a resolution authorizing a modification of contractual authorization for eligibility assessment services for MARTA Mobility, contract number P46866 with Transdev Services, Inc. Next slide, please. On April 14, 2021, the authority executed a 5-year contract with Transdev for an award amount of $2,707,431.65. The scope of the initial contract proposal was developed at the onset of the pandemic, and those assessment projections did not anticipate the prolonged slowdown in in-person assessments during the height of the pandemic, nor the resulting increase in assessments as we move out of and into a post-pandemic environment. As a result, I am before you today to request approval of a contract modification that will increase the contract by 11% for a revised award amount of $3,023,915.97. Next slide, please. At the onset of the pandemic, in-person assessments dropped because we, as were most of our peers, only issuing temporary eligibility determinations. As a result of that decrease in assessments and staff furloughs by the contractor, the authority realized a net savings of $697,460.63 from the previous contract with MTM. However, as we began to move out of the pandemic, the number of applications for assessments have increased, and we've doubled back and are now scheduling in-person assessments for those individuals who we previously provided temporary COVID-related assessments. After the adjusting of COVID, the previous projections for this current contract have been modified accordingly, and the FY22 projections are projected to be 47.29% above the initial base year of the contract for the pre-pandemic projections, and FY23 assessments are projected to be almost 19% above the pre-pandemic projections. Next slide, please. Under the FTA's ADA regulations, paratransit service must be provided to eligible individuals whose disabilities prevent them from using the regular fixed route bus or rail system. And the objective of P46866 is for the contractor to assist the authority based on FTA industry standards in determining the eligibility of those individuals applying for mobility, and to make a determination within 21 calendar days. The current process involves several administrative steps that must follow FTA guidelines to ensure timely processing and notification to applicants. All of these processes are reviewed during the triennial audits that we receive and must be in compliance. Next slide, please. The objective of this slide is to show a high-level breakdown of the certification process to quantify the time required during each step and the appropriate staffing level that is required. Specifically, Marta is responsible for staffing the front desk, the initial application review, creation and update of the client files, and sending out client certification notifications to customers. The contractor, by the contract, is responsible for scheduling the client interview appointments, conducting the interviews and assessments, doing the evaluation of those assessments, and issuing a certification determination to the authority. Based on current application and assessment volume, this process currently requires 5 individuals, administrative support individuals, to perform it. We currently have 4. 2 are provided by the authority and 2 are provided by the contractor, Transdev. Next slide, please. As previously noted, FTA requires the eligibility determination to be completed within 21 calendar days. In order to achieve this requirement, incremental deadlines are set in place to ensure that the authority remains in compliance. Specifically, we have set an internal goal of 2 business days to process the application. The FTA circular indicates that we should schedule appointments within 7 to 10 days. We're currently scheduling those appointments at 17 plus days, so we're 7 days outside of the target. The authority's contract with Transdev mandates that their assessments and determinations be completed and provided to the authority within 5 calendar days. Transdev is currently meeting that, and they are 3 days within target. And as of February, we're averaging a total of 19 days to complete the certification process and notify the customer, and this is 3 days within target. It's important to note here that we're within target currently because of an outstanding group of individuals that we have working with us, both on the contractor side, on the Marta side. They're working overtime hours, they're working on Saturdays, and we've even flexed the use of a non-certification team member in order to be able to meet the 21-day objective. Next slide, please. Eligibility certification is a paper-based process. Nearly 95% of the applications received are either via U.S. mail or by fax, which then have to be reviewed and scanned into our database. Hard copy records are maintained on site for 3 years per FTA retention requirements, and then archived for 7 years per the authority's requirements. It's important to note here that Marta Mobility staff and IT are currently working with the Transdev team to integrate technology that will help to improve and greatly automate a lot of these manual processes. But that's going to take us a little time to get to that point. Next slide, please. To adequately support the eligibility certification process, Mobility is seeking approval of a contract modification that will increase the administrative support staff of the contractor by 1. This will assist with improving the efficiency of the current processing volume. This represents an 11% increase in the contract value over the remaining 4 years by $316,484.32, revising the contract award amount to $3,023,915.97. Next slide, please. Madam Chair, I respectfully return this matter to you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stripling, for this excellent reporting. Are there any questions for Mr. Stripling or any questions on the subject? I see your light. Is that, yes, Mr. Mills, go ahead. Who else's light was on?
I just want to understand the effects of the pandemic.
Yes, sir.
And and how we're projecting capacity, usage of capacity going forward. And just want to make sure I have the facts here. We had in fiscal year 2022.
Mr. Mullis, please pardon me. I need to call for the question, call for the motion and second. We want to file a motion and then second it. Then we go into discussion. Okay. Okay, free to second.
Mr. Roosevelt, thank you, Madam Chair. In fiscal year 2022, in our base contract year, actual was 2,967 cases. Is that the appropriate thing to say?
Customers, individual customers, yes, sir.
At which you had to validate if they were eligible for the service. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you projected it to be 4,370. Is that fair?
Yes, that's the revised projection, yes, sir.
So from a contractual standpoint, we were serving less people that we budgeted for in their contract. Is that fair?
No, not really, sir. The process and the projections are based upon those individuals who have previously certified. Mobility customers have to recertify every 3 years. So part of this projection includes those individuals who will be up for recertification in 3 years. And so we know, based upon individuals who are certifying today, who's going to be eligible in the next 3 years. So we have that number. And
Yeah,
then
I'm only talking about 2022.
Right. And so the 2022 number includes those people who we had projected, as well as those people, new people. There's an estimate. There's typically at around 25 to 30% new individuals who will come on board. So with the new projection and those people who were recertifying, we had estimated almost 3,000 individuals to be certified in FY22. And what happened, to part of your other question in terms of understanding how we got to where we are now, is that at the onset of the pandemic, as were most of our peers, and well, the whole world basically kind of shut down. So we no longer required individuals to come into the office to be certified. And since we couldn't physically lay eyes on them to determine if they were actually eligible, all we had to do was to go by the paperwork that they submitted. And so we were providing temporary eligibility. Mr. Customer, you submitting an application to us. We can't see you physically to do an assessment, so we're going to give you a temporary. We started out giving 6-month temporary assessments. Who knew that this thing would last as long as it did? And then after almost 8-9 months, we ended up providing a year. And we didn't start back until the tail end of last year, 2021, actually bringing people back into the office. So that meant from March of 2020 till around September of 2021, we essentially provided those temporary eligibilities. And so all those people who would have come in to get their permanent assessments, they got pushed down the road. And so we're looking at that bubble, because those people, those 6 months have added up, and we're looking at those people plus new people. That's where we get the 4,000.
So just so I can understand, because the workload, what you're telling me is that you circumvented your regular process for certification.
Correct.
Because of the pandemic emergency.
Yes, sir.
And you're trying to reinstitute that process, and you have a backlog that you need to deal with.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so what's your number on your backlog?
The current number, it moves. It's around 1,000 to 1,500 individuals. And that's where we've added on the individuals here. The unknown is the new people. What has happened is they indicated that the new have increased. We saw an increase almost of 15% in terms of new, and perhaps those were individuals who knew they weren't going anywhere during the pandemic, so they didn't submit during that process, and so now they are submitting. So in addition to the initial 30% that we were averaging new people per year. We've seen about a 10 to 15% increase, so we're seeing about a 40+% increase in new applications. So we've got the backlog of those folks who were temporarily given eligibility, plus the additional new people. That gives us this number here.
So the backlog number is 1,000 to 1,500.
Correct.
So if I add that to the 2,967, that gives me 3,967. And then we have an additional, say 400, that just kind of being added to the service area population growth. Is that
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. 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 And how are we going to pay for this increase? Is this money that we can use from the CARES Act or the additional $312,000? Do you know, General Manager?
No, I would say, yeah, it's coming out of our, it would come out of our budget. And our budget is backed through the CARES Act. We've got funds that we've drawn down, so it goes back to our base budget, and we would just deal with it that way. I would also say that, you know, once the backlog is dealt with, we retain the right in this contract to return to the previous levels of administrative support. So, you know, this one body is really, to hear Mr. Stripling speak, is going to replace all that overtime, Saturdays, evening work that he's talked about, where everyone else is kind of cobbling together just to keep us in the green. That one body firstly eliminates that overtime, and secondly, once we get back to the projections that we're used to, then that body, the contract allows us to do away with that.
And one last question. Can we use technology to make this process? What's our plans to use technology?
Yeah, and Mr. Stripling alluded to that TransDev, IT, and our own mobility group are already convening to use existing technology. It's just, you know, it's there, but we've just got to find a way to blend it to make it work with our operation. So I don't really have a timeline in terms of when that happens, but that is a concurrent effort that's underway right now.
Thank you.
Anything further? Hearing none.
I have a question.
I can't see you, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My question is there a process or guidelines in place for anyone or that has a medical condition or established criteria to supersede the 21 days? Is there something in line, such as a doctor's request or anything that would allow a person to be certified prior to the 21-day goal?
There is no established process, Madam Chair. However, we work with the individual. We receive notification, for example, from social workers or from doctor's offices. I have a client, he or she's getting ready to undergo this major procedure or process, or they've just had a traumatic situation occur in their life, and they ask us to help them to, I won't say supersede, but basically to speed up the process. What typically happens is that, again, the contractor has 5 days to do their assessment. Typically, the assessment occurs in day one. They have time to review their notes. They have time to reach out to the healthcare provider to get additional information if they need, then to formulate that and give us a recommendation. Once they give us that recommendation, basically the process allows us to go ahead and put them in the system. You know, right now, the contractor every day, you know, she'll give the program manager, she'll give us a stack of 20, 30 determinations that have been processed previously. And so we take them through, you know, as they come in, we take them through the process. If there's a situation that needs to supersede that, we have the ability to take that one and go ahead and, you know, jump it in the line. But we tried not to do that because, again, our role is not to determine if someone's situation is more dire than another. But we do recognize, that life happens and people do have certain situations where they really need to have this service. And if they are approved, we do have the ability to do that, if that answers your question.
Somewhat. So my next question is, what happens if we have not met the 21-day goal?
By FTA regulations, what happens is that then a customer is determined to be eligible. I can't recall the exact terminology, but basically presumptive eligibility, that's the terminology. They are presumptively eligible until such time that the authority completes its process or any agency completes its process. The problem with that is that if that occurs, then you have to, of course, notify the customer, but because of the backlog, you could potentially have a number of people that you need to contact, and so you're now taking away from that time the process to make those contacts. Fortunate enough, knock on wood, we're not there, but the FTA regulations say that if you do not meet the 21 days, then you give that customer a presumptive eligibility so they can ride the system until such time that we complete our process. Of course, we don't want to do that because you could potentially end up giving someone a presumptive eligibility only to turn around in the next 5-10 days to take it back from them because they have been determined to be not eligible. So fortunate enough, we are meeting those days. Again, that's one of the reasons why staff is working as hard as it is in order to make sure that we are getting those determinations out within 21 days.
Okay. Make sure I don't miss anybody. Thank you so much.
I might just add to that, Chair Scott. You'll see that the 19 is an average, which I think if Mr. Stripling had the numbers with him, we could show that some determinations happen in a lot fewer days, as he's
most
saying.
definitely, yes, sir.
Yeah, and some, so the average of 19 meets or exceeds the performance target, but to your question, some are indeed processed as little as, I don't know, is 5 days a reasonable guess?
Yes, sir. Prior to, again, around November, December of last year, before this bubble really started hitting us, we were processing and getting applications out, getting determinations out within 5 to 10 days once the contractor provides that notification to us. Again, because part of the process is that you got prepackaged things already together, and it's just a matter of taking that, producing a letter. The time-consuming part is the process that we hope to improve with the automation. Is we're now having to double dip in inputting information into one database and then turning around and inputting that same information into a second database. But we hope to improve that. That will be a great improvement, as well as part of the technology will allow for applications to be scanned in. And instead of, okay, we scan it in, we have a PDF in the file. Now what we still have to do is take that data and manually put it in. Transdev has the ability to allow us to scan an application in, and that information would automatically populate the appropriate fields. Again, that in and of itself saves time. So to your earlier, decrease our ability and need for manual processes.
Well, I would like to, in absence of this and taking the time, I would like to share with you, I don't have my notes with me now.
Yes, ma'am.
But I had an occasion to call on behalf of someone, and you're quite aware I had to reach out to. And there was a breakdown in the length of time of being approved and scheduling. And I called on behalf of this person, not as a Marta person, but just on behalf to see what they told me, to experience what they told me they were experiencing. And so I did, and I made notes in that breakdown. So I do know where there is some breakdown because of the process. and what the person had already been approved, but they were not scheduled. And there was a breakdown. And I kept those notes, I just keep notes. So with that being said, I would like to share at some point so that everything I see here is what the customer experiences.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Let us vote. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item coming before us is a resolution, excuse me, a resolution authorizing a modification of contractual authorization for Secure. Am I saying it right? Secure. The Secure 800 model 40 maintenance support. RFP P47416 and being presented by Lee Nelson.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, Chief Crayer, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Lee Nelson, and I'm a project manager in Capital Programs Delivery, State of Good Repair. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 5. This is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for Secure 800 Model 40 maintenance support, RFP P47416. In other words, requesting approval for a change order to an existing maintenance and support contract for the authority's secure access control system. Next slide, please. What is access control? Simply put, it is the computerized system that secures and protects persons, property, and infrastructure. The current solution, which is known internally as Secure 800-8000, has been serving the authority since the 1990s. It significantly has exceeded the expected duration of its utility, and more importantly, it's no longer supported by its manufacturer. Next slide, please. Prolonging the life of Secure 800-8000 will offer time, and more time is what we need to prepare, conduct, evaluate, award, and install a replacement solution, the RFP process. And we acquire that extra time through an interim extension, which we are calling a patch, of Secure 800-8000 to extend its usefulness while exchanging faulty parts whenever possible. And this we can accomplish through a contractual change order to the authority's existing support and maintenance contract with Johnson Controls to extend the scope, duration, and value of the existing contract. Next slide, please. The interim extension would be prepaid from capital funds for 3 years. While the cost represents a reasonable return on investment, it is a large incremental increase from the value of the current contract. That step-up is due to the difficulty in obtaining replacement parts and engaging personnel with expertise on a system that is more than 20 years old. Let me highlight that it also includes prepayment for 3 years maintenance and support, and that's line item number 5 on the chart. Next slide, please. At this time, I respectfully ask for your authorization to proceed with the change order to extend the scope, duration, and value of the existing contract. I respectfully return the floor to Vice Chair Abdul Salam, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Now, I got a motion and a second, please. This little screen over here is flying. Who made the motion? Can't see you. Okay, and the second is? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Lee. I'm sorry. That was the motion. Any questions in the conversation?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to understand that we have a contract before us where it's it's going to increase by $430,000 for just 1 year?
3 years, sir.
Okay, is that a 3-year? Okay, is that what that is? Okay. And so is this an extension of the contract that we have? Is that my understanding?
That's exactly right. It is a change order to extend the duration, the scope, and the value of the existing maintenance and support contract.
Okay. Would there be some reason why we wouldn't try to achieve another RFP for this particular contract?
Let me see if I understand your question. We are moving ahead with a full open market procurement for a replacement system. All the documents are in the hands of C&P to do that. It is not a quick process, as you understand.
Okay, I do understand.
So we're extending the utility of the current system up to 3 years. That gives us a chance to put the RFP on the street, get the responses, evaluate them, make an award, and install a new system.
Okay, and that's what the plan is that correct?
That's the plan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other question?
One quick question. What, the RFP you're about to put out, what would you expect the value of that to be? Be exact now. I want
Yes.
it down to the last few dollars.
Yes. I will be back here to present that to you. I would say in the range of $3 to $5 million.
Further questions? Seeing none, let us vote, please. And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Lady. Item number 6 on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for professional services for Department of Safety in support of State Safety Oversight Program, LOA L48790, and presented by Ralph McKinney.
Good morning, Vice Chair, Ms. Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and also Chairman Worthy. I'm Ralph McKinney, Chief of Safety and Quality Assurance. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 6, as stated by Ms. Abdul Salam. Next slide. This slide is an overview of the areas I'll cover during the presentation to conclude with the requests to the board. Next slide. In June 2021, the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance received authorization from the board to enter into an agreement with Boyd Caton Group to provide safety consultant services and to assess the accident investigation process for a period of performance that began in July 2021 and scheduled to end December 30, 2022 for an amount not to exceed $1,500,000. The identified funding source for this agreement is CIP 32558. Next slide. Initial support provided by BCG covered developing corrective actions for audits and investigation reports, developing and conducting accident investigation training, providing quality control reviews of accident investigation reports, helping to revise various safety plans, and supporting the safety and security certification program. Next slide. Here are some examples of high-level tasks related to MARTA's engagement with GDOT that receive support under this agreement. As you notice, the first 2 bullets there have been reoccurring and ongoing. Next slide. Additional needs have been identified related to the continued implementation of MARTA's SMS and preparation for the upcoming triennial audit, which is scheduled for September 2022. As recent as April 6, the FTA issued a special directive to GDOT to close open investigation caps and to complete 2 open investigations and issue caps for their findings. To ensure the proper support is available, the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance is seeking additional engagement with BCG through the modification to the existing agreement. Next slide. This modification would include a 6-month extension to the original period of performance and increased funding by an amount not to exceed $737,000 $451.76, bringing the total cost of the contract to $2,237,451.76. Next slide. At this time, I respectfully request authorization from the board to modify professional services contract L48790 to include a 6-month extension and to increase the contract budget by amount not to exceed $737,451.76. Next slide. Thank you, and I return the time back to you, Vice Chair, Ms. Salam, for consideration.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKinney. Are there, make a motion and second. How do you tell? Do we have a second? Very good. Discussion, questions, comments? You did a great job. No questions.
Thank you.
I didn't see you. Put your light up here. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
That's okay. Close those caps.
June 30th, we have them all closed. Thank you.
We go ahead and vote, please. And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 7 on our agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for new rail car support services. Request for price proposal, RFPP P50153, and this is Connie Krisak. Hi, Connie.
Hello. Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Connie Krisak, and I am the Senior Director of the Rail Vehicle Procurement. May I direct your attention to Agenda Item Number 7, requesting a resolution authorizing the award of RFPP P50153 for new railcar support services. Next. On February 2016, the Bus and Rail Vehicle Services contract was awarded to LTK, who is now Hatch LTK, for railcar maintenance support and new car CQ 400 support. This contract also included other consultants with differing scope and is set to expire this June. In October of 2021, the Ops and Safety Committee was briefed that Marta would send solicitations for a new contract. However, the new contract would not include the ongoing services of CQ 400 technical support as provided by Hatch LTK. Because Hatch LTK has provided continued technical support for the new train since the inception of that solicitation, and because of the importance of continuity, Marta feels it is in our best interest to continue this effort with Hatch LTK. Next. The new rail vehicle is in the midst of intermediate design, followed closely by final design with Stadler. Resoliciting the new car support services at this point could lead to costly delays in completion of the ongoing project delivery of the new trains. Hatch is the industry leader in rail vehicle consulting services and has the most knowledge of the Marta CQ 400 design, as well as the integration into the existing Marta operation structure. Resoliciting could also lead to substantial duplication of engineering and project management costs. Hatch is fully immersed into the technical design, quality, and safety of the CQ 400. Next. To tie this in with the Stadler CQ 400 project, NTP was issued to Stadler on December 2019. This contract, as we all know, is the largest procurement in Marta's history. And of special note is that on November 2020, Marta decided to rebrand the design of the rail vehicle. The tentative schedule for Stadler is as follows. In August of this year, we will be completing final design. In Q1 of 2023, the car shell assembly will be completed and transported from Europe to Salt Lake City for final assembly. Q3 of 2024, the first train set is delivered to Atlanta for testing, and in Q4 of 2025, the first train set goes into revenue service. Next. As for the new contract details, the Hatch LTK contract for railcar support services would be a base 5-year contract with 2 one-year options with the same scope. The 5-year base would total $33.8 million, and with the added options, the total contract award would be $37.6 million. Bringing your attention to their DBE participation, for the most part, has been close to the goal of 30%. Of note is FY20 and 21 is when Marta began the redesign of the new CQ400, and it impacted the technical effort of Hatch. Had Marta not hit the restart button in this design process, Hatch would have started the in-plant resident inspector services, which account for most of the DBE goal participation at this time. This contract will be completed in 2029, and of note is that this is 2 years prior to the Stadler contract completion. The last 2 years are mostly set on warranty period, and we feel we no longer need the consulting services. Finally, the Department of Internal Audit has been requested to perform a cost analysis to determine fair and reasonable pricing. Next. At this time, I am respectfully requesting a resolution authorizing the award of P50153 Professional Services Agreement to Hatch LTK for new railcar support services in the amount of $33,807,930.10. Thank you. I'll take any questions at this time.
Let us get a motion and a second on the record first. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Thank you. Let us vote. Oh yeah, now the questions and the discussion. Any questions for Ms. Crisack?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand exactly what we're doing here. And maybe, I mean, I guess I'm asking you, what are we paying these guys to do? Are they have somebody in the factory watching these folks work, or are they just reviewing paperwork? What are they doing?
Yes and yes. They will have eventually people in factories, whether it's in Europe or in Salt Lake City, to review elements, special elements of the train being built and assembled. But currently, they are actually reviewing all of the specifications to ensure that we adhere to specifications of the vehicle with Stadler. So Stadler is designing, they are reviewing all of the documentation, all of the different assembly processes, all of the different contractors that they're dealing with, their experience. So they're basically our eyes and ears to ensure that the contract is adhered to and that the CQ400 is built to specification.
Okay, is this normal, or is this just for this rail car contract under something Marta procures? And you said this is the largest contract we've ever done, and so it seems like a lot of money to me. Okay, so what I'm asking you is, under a normal contract of $10 million, we would do this internally, or we're hiring somebody to make sure, as you said, they do what we ask them to do. And so they are going to certify to us that they've watched what they've done and that they've done it correctly. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, so to answer your question, is for a contract of this type, and of course of this value, it is normally done this way in all agencies. So whenever another agency would procure a new vehicle for their rail services, they would hire consulting services that specialize only in vehicles. It's very specialized, and NLTK is one of the industry leaders to do this. There are other firms, of course, but they're the ones that, in order for continuity, we are requesting them to continue the process. But because of the highly technical background of LTK and because of the vehicle, the safety aspects, the running times, all of the components that are specialized to a rail vehicle, they have the expertise to review and to look at everything that's being specified and given to us by Stadler and to ensure that we are receiving what we've asked for and what we need.
Okay, and this is something we don't have the capability of, Marta doesn't have the capability of doing this?
No, sir.
Okay, and my last question is, this is not something FTA would look at the future and say, I can't believe you did that.
No, sir.
They would expect us to do this, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Further discussion? Seeing none, let's take a vote. And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next item we have is a briefing of safety performance KPIs. Gina Major.
Good morning, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, also Chairman Worthy, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. I'm Gina Major, Deputy Chief for the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance. In our last few meetings, you've heard key performance indicator briefings from my colleagues in both bus and rail. Today, I would like to provide you with an overview of our safety performance KPIs, as well as a look at how we're performing against our industry peers. Next slide, please. This is a look at and report out on our safety performance targets for calendar year 2021 across all 4 service modes, being heavy rail, streetcar, motor bus, and mobility. What's important to know about these key performance indicators is that they are a new requirement from FTA and required for all transit operators. Now, the actual targets themselves are set by the individual transit agencies, but again, the categories and how they are calculated are determined by FTA. MARTA's targets were set or baselined based on our performance from calendar years 2019 and 2020. So starting with heavy rail, we are pleased to be able to report that while we were just slightly above our target for events, we were still under for injuries. Sadly, we did have one heavy rail fatality in 2021, which was a trespasser wayside who was hit by a train back in the summer. Ultimately, this was ruled a suicide by the medical examiner. Looking next at streetcar, we were over our targets for both events and injuries. With there being 13 items total, 9 events and 4 injuries, it's a small enough quantity that we're doing a deeper dive on the nature of the events, both to take a second look at the corrective actions in place, as well as the targets that we established. For example, we know that 6 of the 9 events involved POVs or personal owned vehicles making contact with the streetcar. And 2 of the events involved the streetcar making contact with illegally parked vehicles that encroached upon the path of the streetcar. The 9th event was the streetcar making contact with the POV. Of the injuries, 3 involved patron falls while riding on the streetcar, and 1 involved a fall, while boarding. For motor bus, similar to heavy rail, we were a bit over on our target for events, under with injuries, and had 2 fatalities. We will continue to monitor our performance against these targets as we increase our bus service back to full scale operationally. Lastly, in mobility, we were above our targets for both events and injuries. While this mode of service is operated by third-party contractors, we are increasing our level of oversight through increased observations and inspections, and are planning to conduct an internal safety audit within the next few weeks. Next slide, please. So the information just reviewed is how we performed against our own established targets. To give additional context on our safety performance, we compared ourselves against some of our peer agencies, MBTA, SEPTA, CTA, WMATA, and BART. This comparison was done based on information from FTA's National Transit Database, or NTD. We found that in general, MARTA performs at or better than its peers in most areas. Starting at the top with safety events, we were better than our peers for all modes with the exception of streetcar, and I talked about some of the challenges in the previous slide. For injuries, it's the same story, performing at or better than our peers. We were slightly higher in injuries for mobility, and while streetcar stands out as an area of opportunity, the other noteworthy comment here is that our vehicle revenue miles for streetcar is much lower compared to our peers, so we don't have as much tolerance. Nevertheless, as mentioned earlier, we are already conducting a deeper dive into the streetcar KPIs for 2021. And lastly, for fatalities, we came in at or better than our peers across all modes of transportation. Next slide. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Abdul Salam.
Thank you so much. Very interesting report.
Thank you.
Does anyone have questions or comments? We don't have to vote on it. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Help me understand our targets for mobility and our performance in mobility in 2021, and are we seeing an improvement on that trend in 2022?
So the targets themselves, again, were baseline. We looked at what our quantities were for 2019 and 2020 and took an average for those targets and then set them. So that's where we were for our baseline. This is our first year. This is the first year for this requirement, it was actually introduced part of 2020 under the development of our new agency safety plan. So 2021 provided the first opportunity to take a look at how we're performing. I would like to say mobility is, it seems to be pretty steady where we were, so we are looking back at our at the targets that we set and may do some tweaks for 2022. We're looking at the first quarter for 2022 and are seeing about the same trend in mobility. And I think we may learn a little bit more when we conduct our safety audit. It is on our radar, and that's why we're conducting a safety audit of mobility within the next few weeks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
I may have missed it, but I heard examples of safety events for streetcar, motor bus, mobility. Give me an example of a safety event for heavy rail.
Could be a safety event, could be derailment occurring, hitting an object, could be a tree limb, making contact. I know we had one incident, a car hood was on the tracks and the operator made contact with that. So those are some of the safety events. Typically, they're going to be major safety events to be reported in the NTD database. And so those are examples of what would be considered a major safety event.
So are they categorized 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 5 being worse, or is it categorized in any way?
There's not a deeper breakdown in terms of the severity. It's just that major category. But there is a breakdown in terms of the type of event, again, whether it might be a collision or derailment.
So does the FTA look at it in a category?
Major, that is the FTA category. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Major, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey,
Rick,
I'm sorry.
you got-
I just had
no,
one
can't see that
follow-up
light.
question.
Excuse me, please stay.
Yes.
I apologize. I had one follow-up question, asking about how do we record, or I should maybe more specifically, who records these safety events? Is that something that you do, or, you know, who is keeping track of that, and then how do you record it?
Yes, sir. It is tracked or recorded within the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance. We have a quality specialist who reports the information into FTA's NTD database. So these type of events, any type of a major event is what we call a reportable event, meaning it has to be reported to GDOT, our state safety oversight, and FTA. And we have a, excuse me, wasted some water here. We have a internal process that that supplies our quality specialists with the information, and then that information is submitted into the NTD database.
All right. So this is what I'm getting at. Are there things that are reported maybe by one of the operators or somebody else that then you decide is not a safety event and you don't report it? What's the protocol? How do you determine that?
When we do get notification from our from the IOC regarding an event, we have an on-call response based on that. If our on-call response, excuse me, ultimately determines that the event is not reportable, then it's not made. There's usually a 2-hour window first to GDOT, and then if it's FTA reportable to FTA. However, the input of these incidents into the NTD database, there's a lot. There's maybe by the time this is input into the NTD database, it could be a week or two. We try to get the events input within the 30 days. So if it would be determined much sooner, such that if we didn't need to put it into the database, it wouldn't make it into the database.
All right. I got you. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I don't see lights. I think we're done. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And the final item on the agenda today are other matters. If there are other matters, yeah, I know. I'm trying to read the safety briefing, API. The other matters you can read and review on your own, as they are at the bottom of the page. Is there any further business to come before this committee? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
for Thursday, April 28th, 2022. The first item on the agenda is approval of the March 31st, 2022 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. Can I get a motion and a second? Do it online here. Okay. Okay, it's been properly moved in second. All right. Can I go vote? Everyone's voted? Any questions? Any additions? Hearing none, can call the question for a vote. Okay, it's been voted on. All right, the minutes have passed for approval. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for mobile broadband data plan services and machines to machine data plan services utilizing state of Georgia contract RFPP P50155. Kurt Talbert, AGM Technology, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Frierson. Good morning. Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Srinath, members of the Business Management Committee. Next slide, please. This is a request to the committee to enter into a new 3-year contract with Verizon Wireless for the hotspot and mobility tablet connectivity that we have. Our paratransit vehicles utilize this capability so that they can connect to the internet and stay fresh, and various hotspots that the agency employees use throughout the region. This is a 3-year contract. You see here the cost breakdown, approximately $150,000 each year for a sum total of $468,705.72. We have previously used Verizon successfully throughout the agency. It's performed admirably, and the current contract expires on June 30th, 2022 of this year. Therefore, we're requesting permission or authorization to enter into a new contract with Verizon utilizing the state of Georgia GTA contracting, as it was found to be the most favorable pricing for these services.
Okay. Can I get a motion and second for the resolution before the board? Okay, it's been moved in second. Discussion by the board members. Any questions for Mr. Talbert? Okay, hearing none, I call the question. Can we vote on the resolution? Thank you. All right, the resolution has carried.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Question
for the technical people.
Yes.
Move it and second it, you still have to vote?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Thank you. All right, we have another resolution on the agenda, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement of hardware and software support for Hewlett-Packard Hewlett-Packard services, utilizing the General Services Administration, the GSA contract. This is RFPP P50134. Kirk Talbot, you have the floor again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the slight advancement. This is a request for permission to enter into a contract with Hewlett-Packard, who provides a number of the servers that run many of our core systems here. You see a list of train control runs on these servers, our Oracle ERP system, the fare collection. And this is a request to enter into a contract with the manufacturer of these servers for maintenance and support. It's a fairly standard 3-year contract. You see the price breakdown here of $118,000 and change per year for a total of $354,540.94 coming out of our operating budget, utilizing the federal GSA contracting, which had the most favorable pricing for these services.
All right, can I get a motion and a second concerning the resolution? Okay, it has been moved in second. Discussion by the board members. Hearing no discussion, I call the question. May we vote on the resolution? Moving a little slow this morning. Okay, the resolution has passed. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification and a contractual authorization for the authority-wide wireless communication devices and services. This is a RFPP P43091. Mr. Kirk Talbot, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So this is a request to authorize the addition of funds to our existing contract that we have with AT&T. To put it in context, we just asked for authorization to enter into a new contract starting July 1 with Verizon for the tablets and the wireless access points, or for the Wi-Fi hotspots. We currently also have a contract with AT&T for cell phones, right? So body cameras, cell phones, everything that is enabled on cellular connectivity. That contract as well, and we'll be discussing a new contract for that in a moment, that contract expires on June 30th of this year, in parallel with the Verizon contract. However, this contract began, if you'll see the table up here, back in 2019, and it was a 3-year contract. When we went to consider renewal of that contract, we went out for a competitive bid, and we found that there were no responsive bids by the means that we took. So what we did was we extended the term period of that contract for 1 extra year. At the time, we thought we had sufficient funds to cover it for the full 4 years, but due to utilization, we had a miscalculation. And so at this time, we're coming to the board to ask for the addition of $302,272.33 to this existing AT&T contract to carry us through until June 30th of this year.
All right, can I get a motion and second? Okay, it's been moved in second. Any discussion by the board members? Okay, hearing none. Yes.
I have a quick question.
All right, Mr.
What was
Snyder.
the problem with those, the bids? What was deemed to be unresponsive about them?
I can't speak to the precise nature, but what happens is there's only 3 providers at a national level of cellular. There's T-Mobile, there's Sprint, and there's AT&T. When we went out and did the competitive process, they were required to turn in certain paperwork to meet that procurement process. They did not fill all that paperwork out completely, and they were therefore deemed non-responsive in that respect, right? So we were following our proper procurement processes. These services are typically offered through GSA contracting at a national level, and they basically said, see our pricing on GSA, which is not responsive to the competitive process. Therefore, they were deemed non-responsive, and we had to go through the process of responding to that.
All right, and are we resubmitting those IFB bids again at some point?
So our next request is to go, the next item after this on the agenda is to enter into a contract going forward with AT&T. Okay. Right, so that's the next one. Right. But what we found is that for cellular services, these contracts go through the GSA or national or state level contracts.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, Mr. Rodmos.
My question was answered, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I do understand the biggest impact of this contract is the additional added body cameras, okay? Because of what we've experienced, more body cameras are now required. And so this means that we have more users on the system, which causes it to increase. And so here we are. But we are going to move forward with it. Are there any other questions from the board members? Okay, hearing none, I call the question. May we please vote? All right, the resolution has carried. All right, Mr. Talbot.
I promise this will be my last.
Okay, so we have one more. So the next item is another resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the purchase of devices and services for wireless. Which was this? Okay, thank you. All right, I stand corrected. So this next resolution is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for wireless services utilizing the state of Georgia contract number 9800GT. A is an apple 794-A. Mr. Talbot, you have the floor again.
Thank you, sir, and I promise this will be the last for this month. This is a request to enter into a new contract with AT&T starting on July 1 because our current contract expires here June 30th. What you'll see here, normalized, this is our 3-year projected spend for cellular services. This covers all the body cameras, all the cell phones that the agency uses, approximately $513,000 per year annually. This will come out of our operating funds. The total contract amount will be $1,543,548.54. Apologize, I normally just go straight to the rounding. This is a 3-year contract utilizing AT&T, which will allow us to continue to utilize the existing cell phone infrastructure that we have. It'll be utilizing the state of Georgia contract, the GTA purchasing mechanism, as that is where the best or the most favorable pricing for these services are located.
Okay, may I get a motion and second? Okay. Okay, it's been moved in second. All right, any discussion by the board members? This should be on your screen. All right. Hearing no questions? No discussions? Okay, I call the question. May we vote on the resolution? Okay, the resolution has passed.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Talbot. The last item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for financial capacity and scenario planning services, RFPP P50161. Mr. Calvin Hurley, Deputy Chief Financial Officer. Kevin, okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Kevin? Okay.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Frierson, members of the Business Management Committee, Mr. Greenwood, and Mr. Strnath. I'm Kevin Hurley, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer here at Marta, and I'm here to present for your consideration the resolution authorizing the General Manager, CEO, or his delegate to enter into a contract for financial capacity and scenario planning services, RFP P50161. Next slide. Our agenda for today is to talk a little about the purpose and need, the proposed contract information, and our recommendation. Next slide. The purpose of the contract is to assist MARTA staff by providing an updated financial capacity framework that estimates MARTA's capacity to support operations and prioritizing capital projects and programs inclusive of the following: MARTA operations and maintenance, the MARTA State of Good Repair capital program, more MARTA City of Atlanta and more MARTA Clayton County operations and capital project and programs. The model will allow for a 30-year look ahead with the ability to incorporate current and future revenue streams while supporting any FTA grant applications, allowing for comparison of multiple scenarios, and also provide flexibility and scalability to add future years and even future jurisdictions to be built into the model. Next slide. A little about the contract. It's a professional services contract for the term of 8 months with an estimated cost to complete of $336,600, and it's funded by Marta's Financial Planning Project 31106. The firm selected for the engagement is HDR Engineering, Inc. The firm has an assigned staff who are very knowledgeable and experienced in developing financial capacity planning models. Each assigned member from HDR has successfully completed 10 to 20 like projects. The assigned HDR engineering staff will work closely with Marta Finance, Planning, and our engineering teams to facilitate the framework development and delivery. Next slide. At this point, I respectfully submit for approval of the Marta Business Management Committee for the advancement to the Marta Board of Directors for consideration, the authorization for the General Manager, CEO, or his delegate to enter into a contract for financial capacity and scenario planning services, RFPP P50161 to HDR Engineering, Inc.
All right, may I receive a second, a motion and second? Okay, it has been moved in second. Discussion by the board members. Questions? Mr. Rod Mullis?
Good morning, Mr. Hurley. I consider this is probably one of the most important contracts that we're going to issue here soon. We're only getting the service for 8 months. Should we procure this for a longer period of time? Because our programs will be calibrated from time to time also. Is that correct?
Yeah, the model will have the ability to re-baseline, so we can, for example, incorporate a new sales tax forecast, things of that nature, add additional, like I mentioned, additional jurisdictions if that needs to happen, expandable to future years. So we're trying to build that into the model itself. We would like staff to be able to handle most of that work.
So basically what we're paying for is some really smart guys to build us a model that's dynamic in nature, that we can have some inputs into, which are assumptions, and that we can use this over and over as we go forward. Is that?
Yes, sir, that's exactly correct.
Okay, and this model will also support the finance department as they look at different scenarios for bond refinancing or issuing bonds. Is that correct?
Absolutely, that's correct.
So it seems to me that we are getting quite a bargain here, because it looks like if they work 8 months and they do a full work week for just one person, it looks like about 260 hours to me, which I'm sure is not going to be that straight line. And looks like we're paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $161 an hour. Is that?
Yes, sir.
That would be the blended rate, yes. That would be the blended rate, correct. I mean, it's not just going to be one person. I'm sure there'll be an analyst. It's a blended rate.
Yes.
So the blended rate is, I just did some back of the napkin math. So we're looking at somewhere 161?
Yes, sir, approximately, yes.
Oh. Sure you don't want to get more time?
If I may, I think Kevin answered that. This is a dynamic model, so we can make changes. There is no sense in retaining a consultant for 30 years to make smaller tweaks, and our staff should be capable of doing that. To the extent, let's say a year, 2 years down the road, we find that some of the inputs need some dramatic changes, we'll come back to the board and seek permission to either amend the contract to add more funds or enter the new contract at that point. But right now, we feel this is adequate.
I think this is money well spent.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a couple of follow-up questions. One,
Yes, sir.
do we already have a model like this in place?
Yes, sir. We have an in-house model that we've built in the Treasury office. But this is a more refined model with people that do this for a living rather than internally generated. The internal model works pretty well, but we're really looking at fine-tuning all these additional cash flows that are coming in from the city, from Clayton County, and any other jurisdictions that may choose to join MARTA. So it's time that we build something new.
Okay, I understand. Follow-up to that, we've got the bipartisan infrastructure bill, money coming from that. We've got inflationary issues that obviously are affecting costs for all kinds of organizations. Are those kinds of things going to be incorporated into this plan?
Yes, sir, 100%.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You bet.
All right, any other questions? Okay.
My question is...
Chairperson Scott, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is in regards to what I don't see, which is Fulton and DeKalb. Are they...
Yes, ma'am. They're part of the MARTA State of Good Repair capital programming and MARTA regular operations. Yes, ma'am. They're certainly in there. There's just not a separate revenue stream that is identified for the example, more MARTA Clayton, more MARTA City. Certainly State of Good Repair and existing operations are part of it.
So it wasn't necessary to bullet point Fulton or DeKalb?
It's bullet pointed as MARTA as a whole. We kind of look at that as the one penny is Clayton, is DeKalb, Fulton, and the 1% for the city of Atlanta. It's rolled into the MARTA State of Good Repair and MARTA normal service operations.
So if I presented this to Fulton County commissioners and they ask me that question, how would I identify to them that they're also included? Under what bullet point or where or?
Can you take it back a couple slides, please? They would be located under bullet 1 and bullet 2.
Okay. Thank you.
And certainly, Ms. Scott, I'm happy to make that more pointed if that is helpful to you and the communications you need.
As a resident, and if I was looking at this, I would feel excluded.
Okay, understood.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, if you go over, Rod, if you go over to the Armour Yard maintenance facility over here, there's a sign on one of those doors that says, "No stupid people allowed beyond this point." And when I get to this financial model, I think I've gone past that line without any doubt. And I do not pretend to understand the modeling that you're going to go through. But I don't think I could agree with Rod anymore. This is one of the most important things that we are going to do. And I know that a 30-year future look at capital improvements is a half a page thing. It's not a big deal, but still it is vitally important. So I support what you're trying to do. And have I ever, since I've been on this board, seen a piece of paper that has done this, that you all have done? Have I looked at that before?
Yes, sir. As we build out our 10-year capital program that's required by the MARTA Act, we actually run a 10 and 30-year scenario so we can apply the bonds and make sure we're passing our bonds tests and those sorts of things. So when you see that 10-year capital program, we're running this behind the scenes to make sure we can do that and accommodate the projects that we're considering.
Okay, just a recommendation for those of us like this, if you would point out when I'm looking at that, it would be very helpful to me to know that this is what these guys did and that this is what we are, because I'm probably not going to recognize it. But
yes, sir. Happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could make a statement to the mayor, it's called the debt coverage ratio.
Okay. Okay.
When they say, hey, we can pay for these bonds,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a test, and he goes to Wall Street and talk to the rating agencies, the Standards and Poor's, they're going to say, hey, let me see your model. Let me review how you're looking at this. What's your assumptions? And this just gives us a lot of credibility. But the simple way is say, what's our debt coverage ratio?
Any other comments?
Yeah, I think Mr. Malacino spoke for me. That's how, I could not have said any better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. What's important to me is that, once again, this gives us a way to drive our projects and their development and their building capacity and what we're going to do to prioritize our capital building projects so that we can drive these things that are in the 15th Amendment and these new projects that we have that's in the future for us to build. This model will help us understand what we need in terms of resources and to make it happen. So this is a very important contract. So, are there any other discussions? Okay, hearing none, I call the question. Can the board please vote? All right, the resolution has passed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Appreciate it very much. Yes, sir. The last item that you have is other matters. It's information only. It's the 2022 February financial highlights and financial performance indicators. I'd like the board to take the opportunity to look at that. You'll see some things that are in that file that will tell you a little bit about where we're trending as an enterprise, and I think it's real helpful information. Yes. Mr. Floyd, put your mic on for me. There you go.
Thank you. A comment about the sales tax revenues. I mean, they are substantially ahead of where anybody thinks they are.
Yeah.
What is your long-term, I mean, what are the 12-month economic impact statements going to say for that?
No, that's an excellent question. When I got here last year, January, one of the first things, if not the first thing, is we had Georgia State University do a 30-year sales tax forecast for us. They gave us one in March of 2021, which is what we used to build our fiscal year 22 budget, those assumptions. However, as we went through the fiscal year, we noticed the actuals were far exceeding the forecast given to us. So we went back to them at the end of 2021, calendar year 2021, and asked them to give us a revised one, which they provided in February of this year, in 2022. And the revised forecast we received from them is very, very different than the one we got about a year ago. So this actual sales tax we're seeing now tracks very closely to the revised forecast we received a couple of months ago. Yes, certainly it's a lot better than what we received a year ago. So the way we are trending, for a 30-year look, 2021 forecast projected roughly about 3.4% average annual sales tax growth over the 30-year period. And what we received now, about a month or 2 months ago, is roughly about 4.5% on a 30-year basis. So specifically for this fiscal year, the fiscal year we are in, they had projected a growth, I may be off by a little bit, about 4% or so, but the actual we're seeing is about 15%. So that's quite a bit of a difference. And some of it is because of inflation, because they don't separate out inflation and the actual growth. So we are running at about 8.5% inflation. So some of the sales tax increases are due to inflation, but some due to actual growth.
Thank you.
All right, questions? Mr. Mullis.
Yeah, another notable discrepancy or variance is probably a better way to say it, is our salary and wages. And I'm looking at our sales tax numbers and our salary and wages, and I'm looking at our performance. And I'm thinking that we have some room on our salary and wages to be a little bit more aggressive now.
It's because of the vacancies. It's not necessarily the salaries wages are lower, but it's because of the vacancies. We had assumed a certain level of headcount, and we are trending below that. And there are a lot of initiatives that we have taken. I think Mr. Greenwood can speak to that, how to address, including offering some retention bonuses, hiring bonuses, and all of that. Definitely, that's one of the reasons. And again, this is a nationwide trend. This is not unique to our transit agency. We speak to transit agencies all across the country, and they're all experiencing the same issue.
Well, the agencies that figure it out first are going to be the strongest agencies. Figure out this labor issue.
Yep.
The ones that figure it out, the right ratio is going to be the winners.
Absolutely.
All right, any other comments from the board members? Hearing on, that was the last item on the agenda, so I consider the business management meeting, committee meeting adjourned. All right, thank you.